I was grabbing a late snack when I heard my husband rehearsing in his office. I thought it was a presentation. It wasn't. It was a speech. A breakup speech. For me, to be delivered in front of our co-workers. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. And please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved one. At first, I didn't understand what I was hearing. He was talking so calmly, like he had practiced this many times. Then I heard my name. He said I was emotionally unstable and hurting the company. He said he needed to let me go for the sake of the team. That's when I realized he was planning to break up with me in public at our company retreat. Not just break up, but embarrass me, ruin me. I froze, standing quietly just outside the door. My hands were shaking, but I pulled out my phone and hit record. Every word he said, I saved. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there and listened to the man I married plan to destroy me like I was nothing. When he stopped talking, I walked in casually. I smiled. I acted like I needed a charger. I even kissed him goodnight. He had no idea I had heard everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how we started this company together 8 years ago. I ran the inside, hiring, training, keeping everything running. He was the face, the speaker, the guy everyone saw. We were a team, or so I thought. But something had changed. Slowly, he had been pushing me out, removing me from meetings, making me look weak in front of staff. Now I understood why. He wanted me gone, quietly, shamefully. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't ask him why. That's what he was expecting. I just smiled and said nothing. Because from that moment on, I knew what I had to do. He wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. Fine. Let him think he's in control. I was going to burn him down from the inside without ever raising my voice. 8 years ago, we started the company together in our tiny apartment. We didn't have much, just 2 laptops, a good idea, and a lot of late nights. I handled the people, the schedules, the daily messes. He worked with clients, pitched our services, and managed the tech. It worked. We worked. At least, that's what I believed. On paper, he was the CEO. Fine. Titles didn't matter to me back then. I wanted the company to grow. I never cared about credit. I built our internal systems from scratch, set up hiring pipelines, trained our first staff, handled contracts, managed crises. I made sure things worked, while he smiled in meetings and took calls. But slowly, things started changing. First, I noticed I wasn't being invited to meetings. He'd say, "It's just a quick call, nothing important." Or, "You've been so busy, I didn't want to bother you." I believed him. Then, in front of staff, he started making little jokes. Comments about how I overthink things or get too emotional when dealing with tough decisions. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because what else could I do? Then came the real slap. I discovered my name had been quietly removed from a few key contracts. Contracts I had written. When I asked him, he said it was just to streamline things. I told myself it was okay. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just tired. But the truth was something else. I found out he was having an affair with our 24-year-old junior analyst. She had only been with the company for 6 months. Young, eager, always hanging on his every word. I saw the way she looked at him in meetings. I ignored it at first, told myself I was being paranoid. Then I saw the texts. He was grooming her, not just personally, but professionally, giving her access to sensitive documents, letting her sit in on calls she had no business being in, teaching her things I had spent years building, like she was my replacement in training. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was trying to erase me. He wanted to steal my work, my name, and everything I helped build, and hand it to someone new, someone who didn't know the cost of what we had built, someone who didn't remember when we couldn't afford dinner some nights. But I remembered, and I wasn't going to let him forget. I knew if I confronted him too early, I'd lose. He was careful in public, charming, calm, professional. No one would believe me if I just said, "He's pushing me out." I needed proof. Quietly, I created a private email, then a second phone, then anonymous social media accounts, all clean, all untraceable. I posed as a concerned employee and sent a message to our company's group chat. "Has anyone else noticed some shady things going on in management? You're not alone. Let's talk." To my surprise, replies came quickly, more than I expected. I kept the tone friendly, cautious, and safe. I asked questions like, Have you ever felt uncomfortable around upper management? Or have you noticed favoritism? And the stories started pouring in. A marketing assistant said my husband had made jokes about her outfits during meetings. Another woman in finance admitted she was scared to speak up after she caught him using company cards for personal trips. One junior employee even said he threatened to ruin her career after she turned him down for drinks. I took it all in. Every message, every voice note, every screenshot. I saved everything with timestamps and details. I made spreadsheets, folders. I cross-checked stories. What started as a trickle turned into a full dam breaking. My husband wasn't just cheating on me, he was a walking HR violation. Then came the money. One of the employees mentioned noticing strange payments to a consulting agency that didn't seem real. I looked it up. It wasn't, just a shell company. And guess whose name was listed on the lease of the mailbox? The same girl he was sleeping with. I connected the dots. He was using company money to fund his affair. Hotel stays, dinners, even fake invoices. Everything looked clean, unless you knew where to look. I built a file, not just gossip, but facts, real evidence. I had employee complaints, screenshots of payments, texts that showed his deals with vendors in exchange for under-the-table bonuses. By the end of the second week, I had a report thicker than our employee handbook. And the best part? No one knew it was me. I wasn't the angry wife. I wasn't the scorned partner. I was just a silent shadow, collecting the truth. While he smiled in meetings and flirted with his new favorite, I was quietly building the case that would burn everything he thought he controlled. It didn't take long to confirm what I suspected. The mistress had access to files she should never have seen, confidential reports, financial records, even HR complaints. She wasn't in a position to handle that kind of information, yet there she was, editing documents and sitting in meetings like she belonged. I checked the system logs. My husband had quietly given her admin-level permissions. Not even I had that kind of access anymore. That's when I realized she wasn't just some office fling. He was grooming her to take my place completely, in work, in business, in everything. Fine. Let her think she's important. Let her feel powerful. I was done reacting. It was time to play. I created a fake identity. Lisa M., a recruiter from a boutique agency in New York, built a full profile on a freelance networking site, polished photo, background in digital marketing, just enough details to seem legit. Then I reached out to her with a private message. Hey, saw your profile, super impressive. Are you open to new opportunities? She responded within an hour, eager, polite, but full of herself. The kind of young woman who thinks she's 2 steps from becoming a CEO just because a man in power smiles at her. We chatted over the next few days. I asked casual questions about her current role and let her brag. She didn't even hesitate. She told me about her special access and how she handles sensitive company decisions now. She even hinted that she'd soon be taking on a leadership title. She had no idea she was talking to me. Once I had her trust, I told her I was putting her in the running for a big client-facing role at a fast-growing startup. I just needed a writing sample, a proposal draft, something to show the client. She sent over a version of one of our real documents, confidential of course, with her name on it. Perfect. Over the next week, I fed her more fake opportunities. I even sent her sample files to review, carefully planted with false figures and misleading information. I made sure they'd raise red flags if they were ever traced. Then I waited. Just like I expected, she saved them, printed some, used one of them in a team meeting like she'd created it herself. And I documented everything, screenshots, metadata, emails, because when this all came crashing down, it wouldn't just look like she'd broken company protocol, it would look like she tried to steal and leak sensitive data, all thanks to her own arrogance. She thought she was replacing me. She thought she was winning, but I was already 10 steps ahead, and soon she'd be holding the match that set her career and his on fire. While my husband was busy thinking he had won, I was quietly building my escape and my trap. I started by creating a legal holding company in my name, clean paperwork, proper structure, everything above board. No one paid much attention. Why would they? I was still seen as the co-founder wife, the quiet one in the background. That worked in my favor. I slowly began moving small amounts of company funds into the new holding company. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to shift control. I rerouted payment flows, adjusted vendor agreements, and restructured payroll through channels only I had access to. Every transfer had a purpose, a paper trail, and a reason that looked legitimate on the surface. Then came the crypto wallet. I'd known for months he had one hidden away. He bragged about it once after too many drinks, some off-the-books earnings he never planned to report. It took time, but I found the clues. Password fragments scribbled in old notebooks, a recovery phrase left in a forgotten email draft. Once I had it, I moved fast, transferred the bulk of his coins to a secure, untraceable cold wallet under my control. Clean, final, unrecoverable. But I didn't stop there. I needed the story to end exactly how I wanted, so I built a digital trail, IP logs, access records, even fake login attempts. All of it pointed to one place, the mistress's laptop. I knew she had used it recently to log into the shared finance dashboard. I simply planted enough evidence to make it look like she, and by connection he, had funneled money out of the company. When the time came, I'd present everything. A discovery of missing funds, suspicious wallet transfers, admin logins traced to her device. He'd look guilty, she'd look complicit, and I'd look like the concerned, betrayed co-founder trying to save what was left of the company. Every detail was planned, every move was calculated. He thought I was sitting quietly in the background, letting him run the show. But really I was building the floor that would collapse under him. $1, one lie, one fake login at a time. The company retreat was just around the corner, and I knew that's where he planned to make his move. He had been hinting at a big announcement and was dropping comments like, "It's time for a fresh start." I could practically hear the speech he had rehearsed in his office playing again in my head. The one where he would dump me in front of our entire team, spin it as a professional decision, and come out looking like the brave, heartbroken hero. So I made sure I got there first. I proposed a new feature for the retreat, a women in leadership panel, something empowering, forward-thinking. Everyone loved the idea, especially the board. It was perfect. I pitched it as a way to show our company's growth and values. My husband, of course, barely listened. He was too focused on his moment. That worked in my favor. I handpicked the speakers, senior women across departments, each of whom I knew had been quietly pushed aside or ignored under his leadership. I gave them space to speak openly about their experiences, their vision, and what real leadership looked like. Behind the scenes, I did more. I reached out to 2 key investors and a high-profile client rep. "Come see what we're building," I said. "You'll want to witness this shift in person." They agreed, quietly, no announcements. I also hired a small AV crew under the radar, not company staff, outsiders I trusted. I told them I needed the panel recorded for marketing, but also quietly live-streamed to a private link I controlled. Microphones were placed carefully, projectors checked and double-checked. Everything was crystal clear. I positioned the panel at the end of the day, when I knew my husband would try to hijack the moment. He couldn't resist a stage and an audience, and I made sure he had both. The room was packed, cameras rolled, guests were seated in the back, unannounced. The panel started smoothly, powerful and professional. Women spoke their truth, and people listened. I saw my husband checking his watch, getting ready. He thought this was his stage, his moment to turn the lights on me, call me unfit, and pitch his little fairy tale. What he didn't know was that I had built this moment not as his stage, but as his trap. Everything was in place. All I had to do now was let him speak, and then I'd show them what he really was. He stood up like he owned the room, smug, confident, rehearsed down to the tilt of his head and the way he adjusted his suit jacket. Everyone turned to face him, expecting some corporate announcement or maybe a thank you to the panel. Instead, he smiled and said, "I want to take a moment to talk about the future, both of this company and of certain personal matters." I knew what was coming, but it still burned hearing it out loud. He continued, smoothly. "As some of you may have noticed, things have been strained. My wife and I, though we've built this company together, have reached a crossroads. For the health of the business, and for our own well-being, I've decided it's time to step forward alone. She has been struggling with some emotional challenges that have impacted our operations. I will be taking the company in a new direction, one focused on clarity, stability, and progress." The room went completely silent. He stood tall, looking like a man who had just heroically made a painful, noble choice. I watched some faces shift, confused, uncomfortable, but too unsure to speak. He thought he had nailed it. That's when I stood up, calm, no anger, no panic, just quiet control. I walked to the front, took the mic gently from his hand, and said one sentence. Let me show you the full picture. The projector screen behind me flickered, and then his voice filled the room. The secret recording, his private rehearsal, word for word, every cold line, every cruel detail. He didn't sound noble or heartbroken. He sounded calculated, arrogant, cruel. Then came the screenshots, messages between him and the junior analyst, jokes at employees' expense, schemes to push me out, laughter about how easy it was to lie to the board, emails showing misuse of company funds, a timeline of events, dates, receipts. The audience was stunned. A few mouths dropped open. My husband looked like the air had been knocked out of him. And when I was done, I stepped back and simply said, that's the real story. Do with it what you will. No screaming, no tears, just truth, laid bare in front of the people he thought he could fool. He wanted to humiliate me in public. Instead, I buried him, quietly, professionally, and completely. The silence after I played his voice was louder than anything I'd ever heard. His speech, the one I had secretly recorded, echoed across the room. Every smug, cruel word. The way he rehearsed calling me unstable, the jokes about how no one would side with her, and the plan to make me look like the problem. People shifted in their seats. A few exchanged glances. He stood frozen, eyes wide, face pale, but I wasn't done. I clicked to the next slide on the projector. Screenshots filled the screen. His messages to the junior analyst. Private texts turned into public proof. Flirting. Meetings in hotel rooms. Him calling her future partner, not just romantically, but in business. Then came a shared note between them. Plans to gently remove her, meaning me, from the leadership team. Steps, dates, even a short list of talking points to spin it to the board. Whispers filled the room. I clicked again. Now came the screenshots of emails between him and a shady vendor, one he'd arranged side deals with in exchange for personal bonuses. I showed how company funds were quietly routed to a shell account tied to the mistress. Vacation bookings paid from the company card, invoices with fake consulting hours. The HR violations followed. Anonymous employee complaints I had collected while posing as a whistleblower. One female staffer wrote, "He keeps touching my shoulder. I asked him to stop." Another, "He said I'd lose hours if I didn't go to dinner with him." I had blacked out names to protect them, but the room still shifted. Then came the final slide, a digital trail showing the login history of the mistress's company laptop. It tied her to the stolen files. It tied her to the fake invoices. And by association, it tied him to the fraud. The room didn't explode. It sank. A slow, stunned quiet. One client rep stood up without a word and walked out. Two others followed. A board member leaned over to whisper something to another. My husband tried to speak, but nothing came out. Then one of the senior investors, the calm one, always in a tailored suit, stood and said clearly, "Thank you for your transparency. We'll be in touch with our lawyers." No yelling, no drama, just the cold, clear end of his empire. He had tried to bury me in public. I just returned the favor with evidence. The meeting ended, but no one clapped, no handshakes, just quiet shuffling of papers and stunned faces. My husband stood there like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. I didn't look back. I just turned and walked out. I knew he'd follow me. As I reached the elevator, I heard his steps behind me, quick and uneven. He slipped in just as the doors were closing. The moment we were alone, he tried to speak. "Please, can we just talk? Just you and me. No board, no cameras. You blindsided me, okay? I made mistakes, but we don't have to end it like this. We were a team once." I didn't say a word. He kept talking, like he could still talk his way out of this. Apologies mixed with excuses. Accusations mixed with desperation. He tried calling me baby, like it still meant something. He looked different now, smaller, like all that arrogance had melted away. Still, I said nothing. I just looked at him with the same quiet smile I wore when I first heard his rehearsal. The smile that said, "I already won, and you didn't even notice." The elevator doors opened and I walked out, left him there. Outside, down the hall, HR was already doing their job. The mistress, now exposed for what she was, stood by the reception desk, holding a cardboard box filled with her things. Her face was red, her eyes puffy. Two HR reps flanked her, one on each side. She looked at me as I passed, but I didn't stop. I had other things to do. The next morning, the board called a vote. It was quick, clean, unanimous. I was named interim CEO. The same people who once ignored me now welcome me with firm handshakes and new respect, not because they suddenly saw my worth, but because I had shown them the truth. I had done what my husband never expected. I didn't cry. I didn't fight in the open. I planned, I proved, and I won. I walked into my office that day, took my seat at the head of the table, and began to rebuild what he had tried to destroy. Quiet revenge is the loudest kind, and I made sure they all heard it. The moment I was named interim CEO, I moved quickly. First, I revoked every admin privilege my ex-husband had. He no longer had access to anything, emails, systems, or finances. I changed every password, shut every door, and locked him out for good. Next, I fired the junior analyst. The affair was one thing, but the data breaches, the unethical access, and her role in trying to push me out, that made it a business decision. HR handled the process. She walked out with a box in her arms and no title behind her name. Then, I addressed the company. I issued a clear and public transparency statement to our employees, clients, and board members. I acknowledged what happened, owned my part, and promised change. Not just leadership change, but a culture shift, one where trust and accountability mattered more than power plays and whisper campaigns. Privately, I returned to the anonymous whistleblower account I had used earlier. Only now, it had a new purpose. I started sharing behind-the-scenes stories, how I uncovered lies, protected myself, and rebuilt control. I gave advice without names, just lessons. It spread fast. People from other companies started following, sharing, learning. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about power, earned, not taken. And every time I posted, I ended with the same line, a reminder, a warning, a truth I lived by. Next time someone tries to bury you, make sure you own the shovel. Do you think I went too far? Or was it exactly what he deserved after everything he did behind my back? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Was the revenge satisfying, or just the beginning? And if you enjoy stories about betrayal, power moves, and cold calculated payback, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.